Pregnancy naturally is something that comes with a lot of joy and happiness, but when it's perceived seemingly as unwanted, it becomes chaotic and problematic. Thanks for joining us on our conversations today as we talk about teenage pregnancy, and this is Generation Next. My name is Anwuli Onyekong. Super excited to be here, but let's pause it here as we hit the streets for their thoughts on today's topic. When I come back, I will tell you who my guests are. Don't go away.
Sexual violence, poverty, lack of information to teenagers, and family pressure to marry.
Protected sex is one of the problems of teenage pregnancy. Also greed and the kids not sexually educated, and also peer pressure too can be a cause of teenage pregnancy. Cut your coat according to your size. So you have to cut your coat according to your size. Know your family background and know what you can afford, and don't be.
The environment the girls born and brought up. 2, lack of parental responsibility and care. 3, poverty. 4, cohabitations among the boys and girls. And 5, lack of job opportunity, more especially in Nigeria.
Welcome back. It's still Generation Next, and I told you that we are talking teenage pregnancy. Imagine you that is watching me now having a teenager at home, and she comes home with a pot belly. How do you think you will feel? If you want to know more, just hang in here. And meanwhile, let me tell you who my guests are. At my left is Amechi Aniagba. Amechi Aniagba is the CEO of City Ride magazine. Amechi is a journalist and a social analyst. Amechi, glad that you're here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I feel glad to be here.
All right, thank you very much for coming. And I equally have Chinyere Ugu. Chinyere Ugu is a sales representative with one of the multinational companies in Nigeria. Chie, glad that you're here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you very much. We're talking teenage pregnancy. Like we are here, we know what teenage pregnancy is, but for the benefit of those that might be watching and they may not know at what age, Amechi, please can you tell us what is teenage pregnancy?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to start from the word teenage. Okay. Means somebody who is below the age of adulthood, which could be referred from 13, 14 to 17, 18, and below 18 actually.
Okay.
So when we talk about teenage pregnancy, it means those pregnancy that occurs before the age of adulthood. Okay, that's hot teenage pregnancy could actually be referred to.
Okay, thank you very much. You've heard Amici.
Yes.
Said teenage pregnancy is from any child that gets pregnant before 19. Yeah. So from your own view, what's teenage pregnancy?
Yeah, I totally agree with him. From the ages of 11 to 19 is teenage pregnancy. From 20, yeah, definitely you could bear all the responsibility.
Okay, and we've agreed that teenage pregnancy is that you have to be up to 20 at least for you to be pregnant. But people will agree with me that in Nigeria there is a certain part of this country that we all know they get married quite early. And when we are talking about this, I'll be asking myself, are these people not part of what we are talking about? Chi, what do you think?
Yes, early marriage should be one of the causes of teenage pregnancy. And we all know the part of the country where this is rampant, but we also have some part of the countries where it is also practiced, even within, even within the East.
Okay.
It's seen like when you're in your 24, 23, like this girl is old, Men prefer from 18, 19, and what are the odds that she won't get pregnant if she gets married at 18 and 19? But yes, predominantly we have a certain tribe that do believe in marrying out their children even before they are mature enough, even before they're of age to decide I want to get married or not.
All right, thank you. Amechi, what's your take on this?
Let me come to
we are talking about teenage pregnancy, and we know there are people. It's like a norm there to get married quite early. There, if you're 20 and you're not married, something must be wrong with you.
Now that brings us to the place of culture here.
Okay.
When you say, let's talk about East, West, and East and North.
Yeah.
In the East, if you are married, even if you are below 20, it is no longer a crime that you're pregnant. Okay.
Yeah.
So if it equally applies to the part of this country, and the other side, they marry you before you get pregnant. I don't. What we're talking about is no longer teenage pregnancy, but forceful marriage. Because
is it cradle snatching now?
Because it's cradle snatching. Because if I believe what we are discussing here is outside the context of marriage, where you can say that teenage pregnancy occurs. But I'll beg to differ when it comes to marriage rights. In some people that their culture supports it, their religion supports it, even their own society have come to agree to that standard.
But you do realize that culture supporting a certain ideology doesn't make it less teenage marriage. Because if we are saying that if you get pregnant within the confines of 11 to 19, even if you are married and you are less than 20 and you get pregnant, yes, you are right, you're a married woman, but you're still a teenager. And the risk prone to every unmarried single girl, you will still be exposed to it. It really doesn't, make it
but the only culture is about what you make of it, right? If culture is people's way of life, and the laws are made for the people, not people for the laws, don't you think there will definitely be a bone of contention between your unbelief and those who believe? They believe they don't know what you're saying, and we believe you've been exposed that certain things should be allowed to stay.
Let me come in here. I think we all know culture is a way of people's way of life, but really, we're talking about teenage pregnancy, and we know the problems that come with this pregnancy, like the fistula. These are the things that occur, and probably the culture supports it. When such a problem occurs, what happens?
Exactly what we are talking about. You see, I usually like to talk about the problem before the solution.
Okay.
We've come to agree that teenage pregnancy occurs between the age of 11 to 19. Less than 20. It is wrong, from my own understanding. Reason being, there are certain diseases associated with these activities. But at the same time, talking about it wouldn't just solve any problem if people's orientation have not been changed. Okay, some parts of this country, not just this country alone, we've seen some people in Nigeria have gone outside of Nigeria to go to another part of the country to cradle snatch a little girl who might eventually have a carryover effect of adolescent age. So these issues that occurs here requires more than just looking at the teenage pregnancies. Those things can be avoided if proper orientation is.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, this brings us to the next question. So, Chinwe, what do you think are the causes of this teenage pregnancy?
Like rightly stated, early marriage, number one. Peer pressure. This pressure to want to belong, right? And then you jump because your friends are jumping without really counting the cost. And then also lack of communication between the child and your parents. While I was growing up, I was told if you sleep with a man, you get pregnant. And
sleep with touch.
Yes. If a man touches you, you get pregnant. And the level of innocence then and now, it's totally different. So I had the impression that no one should tap me or touch me while I'm lying down on the bed. So you can imagine the scare when, and I have brothers, when I'm lying down and then I wake up and someone is my brother. I'm like, hey, I was told no one should touch, no one should lie. You get? So parents should really start opening up. You know why? Because it doesn't even take your child leaving the house to talk to a friend. It just takes their Android phone and an internet, and they just Google what they need to see, and they get. And the funny part is, Google will always give you it advertises in a very nice way. You understand? And then for students in high school that are so prone to, like in my own set, so prone to reading Mills and Booms, all those street romantic novels, you have a lot of baggage in your head. So yes, parents need to communicate effectively And when I say effectively, when you speak and I don't understand, you haven't communicated effectively. You have to ensure that the message you're passing across, your teenage daughter, your teenage son understands what it is.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Amechi?
Yeah, I think
Can you
I'll
elaborate
align
more?
myself with Chinyere. You know, coming with the fact that, you see, while growing up, it seems like it's a taboo to mention private bodies.
Yeah.
You know,
Part of the
part
body.
of the body. It's like actually like a sacrilege to even say it. Sometimes they will tell you this one is, they call it another name that doesn't really mean something. And you innocently, you go outside and you ask the same question to somebody who knows better. The uncle will now start explaining to you, especially the teenage girls, and the uncle will now start showing you certain things you are not exposed to.
Privileged
So I
to.
think part of the consequences, a couple of the causes, lack of sex education, which is very vital in the family. It is high time. Things have changed and times have changed. It's no longer where you say, whatever I don't tell my child, he or she will never learn outside. This time around, if you don't teach them, they learn from someone else, they learn from their phones, they learn from their neighbors. Peer pressure. And, you know, this is a social media age. So, and there are a lot of unrestricted areas that even without your consent, you'll find out that when you're trying to use the slang on your kid,
they already know.
Let's see what mommy is talking about. We think we don't know. So I think that's part of the causes. The parents need to do more, because the first contact of a child, the first education a child has is in the family. So if you don't teach them what they need to know at that basic, someone else will do that job for you badly.
All right, the parents, they both told us that it's time to open up more to your children. Call the part. If it's the breast, tell them it's the breast. If the penis, tell them it's the penis. If it's the vagina, talk about it. After all, it's the body part.
Indeed.
It's just like your hand and your eye, so you're free to call it by the name it is known. But me, I want to add, we are talking about causes of teenage pregnancy. I think greed and poverty is also a major cause of these things.
Yes, it is.
Because the society we found ourselves, you see a child of 16, the child wants to carry Brazilian hair or bone straight now that costs almost 100,000. Probably the parent's salary might be less than 100,000, and the child wants to wear such. So, Chi, can you elaborate on this?
Well, you see, that's why I said constant communication.
Okay.
I remember while growing up, my dad would always say, my dad would always say, he that treks on his feet will still get to the place he that rode on his car got to. It's just a matter of time. You get? And then he always remind us that, you know, your name is one thing that will outlive you. That the moment you drop dead, your money and your wealth will really not count, but it's your name and what you've actually done that will outlive you. So it went a long way to help myself and my siblings in conducting ourselves very well.
Manners, yeah.
You get? And most times it's true that your parents don't have a certain are not up to certain social strata. But you see, I feel that greed is something that somehow you pick from the house. Unspoken things, communication between the man and the woman, when things are not so fantastic, how do you as parents handle it? Do you always compare your kids to other people? Do you get me? Like, this happened, this person is that. When the child is of age, you begin, Dangote has this, Otedola has this, how come you don't have this? How come they have this? How come I can't have this? Do you get? So I feel to curb that greed, parents really need to go an extra mile to communicate, try so much not to pass down some frustrations and things not working down on their children. Try hard not to compare your kids at a very early stage, because once you start with that, to them it's a competition. So if my age mate has this, I should be able to step up. It shouldn't only be in my academics, because most times we feel I'm trying to push you to be the best in academics, but it affects every other aspect of their life, because once they get into that, oh, this person is this, I should be this, it doesn't just stop in the education, it extends to every other aspect of their lives. And then there are some children, in fairness to parents, that are just
impossible.
You just can't win.
Yes,
no
because
matter what
I was actually coming to that, because if you're talking, judging by the first point you raised, it means we are actually putting much blame on the kids, but it's not supposed to be so, because
fairness to
yes,
parents.
that's why I said I can agree with you on that last part. But previously, because in the family, I think you see, there's what they call contentment, and there's what they call moral and upbringing. There's what they call integrity. Now, I remember my mother told me one thing. She said, whatever doesn't belong to you shouldn't be envious of it. And whatever you have, you should be okay with it. So I noticed that negligence on the part of parents plays a major role more than the greed itself. Because when your child comes back home, you know this is the clothes you bought for your child.
Exactly.
And then the child comes back home and with different things.
Looking brown,
and you're not asking questions. What God is he or she serving? That miraculously brings all those things, and you don't notice them because you're busy chasing money. And you wake up, your child will tell you, this is what I want, this kind of hair I want to make. If not, ask yourself, where is she getting this from? And most of the time we just say, leave them, they are just growing. That growing is the mistake. Those are the major mistakes the parents make.
All right.
Because if you don't teach a child how to grow up, by the time he or she grows, she picks up everything on the street. So I think this issue of greed doesn't really play much role compared to negligence in the house, because you can't miss what you have not tested before.
Thank you very much, Amechi. Our guests in the studios have told us certainly that the bulk of the blame is certainly on the parents. So parents, it's time to up your game so that you turn out kids that will be good children. Now, this brings us to the next question, Chi. What is the right time for us to really talk about sex education? When should parents open up to their children and talk about sex education? Because this part of the world is something that shouldn't be discussed. That's the way it is. But I think it's time to open up more. We've said that we should open up. So what time do you think is the right time for parents to talk about sex education?
If your child is able to identify A and say A, you need to tell them.
True.
Okay, so there's this video that made around some years back, I think last year or 2 years ago. What's in your pants belongs only to you. Your pants cover up your private parts. So for maybe that child that is 3 years, you can start with, this is your private part. Show me your private part. And then maybe they point on the eye. You say, no. It's your breast, it's your bum bum. Show me your bum bum, and they touch their bum bum. And then you make fun out of it. What's in your pants belongs to who? Your pants covers your what?
Vagina.
Okay, so who should touch your pants? Mommy, and who else? Daddy or aunties that I know. Now, if auntie begins to touch your private part the way you don't like, what do? I scream. And these are...
Yes.
And they chant.
Yes.
And they chant.
For every stage, there are different communications. You get you can't come to a 14-year-old child and say, what's in your pants belongs to me. What's wrong with you? You child already. Yes. The child obviously knows more. Obviously. So as if your child and you know when we are talking about this teenage pregnancy, we limit it a lot just to
female child.
To female. No, also enlighten your male children, because yes, they may not be prone to teenage pregnancy, but may be prone to other things. Do you understand? So yes, if your child can identify A and pronounce A, praise the Lord, hallelujah, they should be told.
All right.
So for every age, that's why parents need to be creative in their information. For every age, the internet is so wonderful. You could get information for age grade by age grade, and then you know how to present it to them. You don't go about the same way you talk to an 18-year-old person, present the whole gory situation to a 3-year-old. You scare her off.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Amici.
Yeah, I think I agree with them, but I also want to buttress the point she made about the emphasis seems to be more on the male and the female gender. Forgetting that when you talk about teenage pregnancy, some corporates or some things happens to be their classmates in the school. Okay, because we know
and
that
2 people actually involved, the guy and the girl.
Yeah. So because I know of a case in Lagos, then they were in JS2, and the girl got pregnant. And surprisingly, if it was in the part of my country, it's a taboo. Even your kinsmen will be aware of that. But this one, they even sold uniform for them, and they celebrated. The small girl gave birth to a child. They saw uniform, did naming ceremony in the West. Now, while teaching your female child that this part of your body belongs to you and is private, that same gesture should also be extended to the male child, that when you do this, there's action begets a reaction. There's an action that requires consequence. That in as much as you're allowed to choose your actions, consequences you're not free to choose. It comes with responsibility. So I think as long as your child can speak anything, even money, you should start teaching them according to their grade.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. I think we are all on the same page.
Yes, yeah.
Don't be shy to talk to your children about sex education. It is very important. Generation Next will be back in a bit with the discussion, teenage pregnancy. So don't change that dial. Welcome back. It's still Generation Next, and we're still discussing teenage pregnancy. I'm glad you're still watching. Now, Amechi, can you tell us what the consequences of this teenage pregnancy are? What happens when a child gets unwanted pregnancy?
In school, I was taught about resonance. When an object causes another vibrating sympathy because of the reaction of a certain object. So when such a pregnancy occurs, it doesn't only affect the child, it affects the parents, it affects the neighbors, it affects virtually the entire people that knows the child, even the church. Imagine if your father is a clergy in the church or an elder respected, it affects everybody. So the result, the consequences, and the disadvantage is enormous. One, it will stop you from going to school because you can't continue education while being pregnant. It will affect your parents' work because they equally have to be there taking you to antenatals and all that. You don't know anything. 3, it can also cost you sickness. You can even die in the process because you are not yet formed properly. And we're talking about, on the part of the male child, emotional trauma is there. Any small thing, they will even refer to you, they send you to school. Instead of going to school, this is what you're going to do. That's, psychological trauma will continue. No matter how old the child is, whenever he sees the baby, he blames his own failures on the baby. Say, why would this girl get pregnant? And in most cases, it affects them in terms of growth. So the disadvantage is enormous. I think the best way to avoid temptation is not to yield to them, is to flee from them.
All right, thank you. Amechi has told us that the disadvantages of teenage pregnancy, it's very enormous. But I don't think it's all disadvantages, because we say that pregnancy is a blessing from the Most High God. But he's left for, Chi, can you tell us something? What?
Definitely. Every good and perfect gift comes from God.
From God.
Regardless of the timing,
the way we perceive
it's still a gift. However, timing is important. It's very important. Because even when we go through creation, we see that God didn't just give Adam a wife. He took his time, gave him a job, had a relationship with Adam before he brought Eve. Showing us that you must have a direction. You must have a course on which you're already charting before you look for someone to cling to or someone to cling to you. Okay, but that being said, the consequences is quite enormous. We have infant mortality, a situation whereby the child might die due to some certain complications. We have a premature birth. Also, at times when you even give birth to the child, because it's a teenager, most times baby is underweight, less than 2.5 kg, which most times is also, detrimental to the child's health. And then on the part of the mother, like you mentioned, she will drop out of school. There's no way you would be pregnant and be going to school. Even if you're able to max it to the 4th, 5th month, depending on your body type, you definitely will lose out a lot on school. Even if your parents eventually step in, but you lose maybe a year or 2, you get, and then this high blood pressure, which is more during pregnancies, and it could lead to preeclampsia. And most times that leads to high maternal mortality rates. You get so it's much. And then again, even if you skip the infant mortality, even anemia, Yes,
of
anemia
course.
is also
It's
one of the consequences on the teenager. And then even if you skip anemia, you skip the high blood pressure that could lead to preeclampsia, you don't die in the process. Most times you're taken aback because you lose time, you lose out on opportunities if you're not able to go back to school. You get, life generally becomes difficult for you.
On this note, I want to tell us that time is never really our friend in this program. But we've been talking about teenage pregnancy, and I know you've learned a lot. But still, the discussion will continue next week when we will wrap it up. On behalf of Chinyere Ugu and Amechi Anyaba and everybody in the studio who has made this work, I say a very big thank you. Remember that discussion continues next week on teenage pregnancy. My name is Amuli Onyekong. See you then.